Well, I don't know how many of you are still out there on YouTube watching videos like this, as it's a war zone right now trying to avoid spoilers for some of you. Twitter and even YouTube are full of thumbnails, comments, tweets, and anything else you can think of that spoils RE9. However, your boy's gonna continue to fight and deliver as much of Resident Evil Requiem goodness as I can before it releases next week. Just be cautious when looking at the comment section, as that can be a dangerous place, trust me. Anyway, today we're increasing the hype level for Resident Evil Requiem as I go over everything I'm excited for with Requiem from the gameplay side of things. Whether that'll be enemy features, gameplay mechanics, or explorable settings, these are the gameplay mechanics that have me extremely excited for Resident Evil Requiem. But first, this video is officially sponsored by the good folks at Green Man Gaming. Right now, they have an insane discount available for the game of today's topic, and probably the reason why you're all here. Yeah, that's right, you can save 18% on Resident Evil Requiem on PC at Green Man Gaming, and this even includes the deluxe edition of Requiem, allowing you to save even more money thanks to Green Man Gaming. And for those of you that are worried about that pre-order bonus of Grace's Apocalypse costume, don't worry, Green Man Gaming has you covered, as purchasing through them will still include this additional costume for all purchases made before the game's launch, using the link down below in the description of today's video. And the fun and savings don't stop there. As a major fan of all survival horror games, and if you're anything like me, you'll be happy to know that you can pick up all sorts of upcoming and officially released PC games via the link in the description as well. Games like Fatal Frame 2 Remake, Reanimal, and many more are all available at a discounted price, saving you money and supporting this channel at the same time. So what are you waiting for? Save big and use the link in the description to purchase Resident Evil Requiem and any other game at a discounted price today with Green Man Gaming. Now back to today's video. Number 1, first person and third person. While it seems like an obvious inclusion after Resident Evil Village added a third person mode to the game a year later after its initial launch, it wasn't until I saw some gameplay footage regarding how easy it is to switch between these perspectives mid-game that I was like, wow, that shit's pretty damn cool. Seriously though, the fact that you can change perspectives for both Grace and Leon whenever you want instantly adds replayability, as now I'm motivated to replay the game all over again in the different perspective that I didn't use in my first playthrough. The first person perspective creates more tension and horror for the player, making it the perfect fit for Grace's sections in the game. And the third person perspective creates a more addicting and fast-paced experience, making the perspective perfect for Leon's sections in the game. In fact, the recommended settings for Resident Evil Requiem are third person for Leon and first person for Grace, so at least for my first playthrough, I'll be using that setup. With that being said, you can definitely expect me to try Grace in third person for my second playthrough. As for Leon in my first person, I don't know about that. His sections look like it might be a little crazy and intense trying to play in first person, but I'll definitely give that a shot at least once. And the best part, by the way, if you don't like it the way you're playing it, you can literally switch it mid-game, making it easier than ever before to switch between perspectives in Resident Evil. Number 2, Leon's improved combat system. As stated earlier, Leon's sections in the game look to be a lot more action heavy, which is to be expected from the powerhouse that we know Leon to be, even if he is in his 50s now. Regardless, while the attacks don't look that crazy or as insane as his attacks in RE4 Remake, there are some interesting improvements to his combat that look to combine some of the best parts of Leon's arsenal that we've seen over the years. The parry system with his new Tomahawk axe is a nice touch, but the fact that it doesn't break and you can keep repairing it allows you to abuse its ability and go full on attack mode on any enemies in your path. However, to counter the fact that it doesn't break, you do need to sharpen it when the durability of the axe gets low. His melee attacks are back, although this time Leon uses the environment to his advantage. For example, if you kick a zombie close to a wall, you might be able to instantly kill the zombie as the attack will pin it against the wall and then smash its head in with Leon's brutal attack against the wall, as seen in the trailer. Speaking of which, we've seen confirmation of QTE attacks from a distance, one of Leon running towards a zombie and doing a jump kick attack, and the other Leon using an attack from up high in the attic fight against the fat zombie. And finally, the counter system from Resident Evil 6 appears to be back as well. We've seen 2 different shots of it in the trailer so far, one with his handgun and one with his shotgun. Safe to say that Leon, despite being older than he's ever been in a Resident Evil game, will be more resourceful than he's ever been in terms of the combat. Number 3, Blister Heads. If you're a fan of arguably one of the best survival horror games ever created, Resident Evil Remake, then I'm sure you are very well aware of the mutated zombie called the Crimson Head. Crimson Heads are zombies that were introduced in Resident Evil Remake, and since then they've only appeared in that game. Basically, long story short, after killing a zombie and if their head didn't get completely destroyed when you killed it, the body of the zombie will remain on the ground. You are then given the option to grab your trusty lighter and some kerosene and incinerate the zombie. Failure to completely dispose of the zombie's body will result in this zombie rising from the dead again. Only this time it's now a super zombie called a Crimson Head. Faster, stronger, and way more dangerous than your traditional zombie. Well, 24 years since Crimson Heads were introduced, Resident Evil is finally bringing us something similar to them back. I give you the Blister Heads. Now, we don't know much about the Blister Heads as I only have other creators' thoughts to go off of right now in the short teaser of them in one of the trailers we've seen so far, but like Crimson Heads, Blister Heads are mutated versions of the zombies that we encounter throughout the game. Just like the Crimson Heads, if you kill a zombie without completely blowing the head off, the body will remain on the ground. When this happens, you can dispose of the body using an injector that Grace can craft with the infected blood that she finds throughout the game. If you don't do this, at some point in the game in either Leon's or Grace's playthrough, the zombie would rise again and its head will completely explode, revealing a head that quite honestly reminds me of a licker's head. Actually, thinking back to Resident Evil 2 Remake, this kind of looks like one of RE2's cut enemy types, so it's really cool to see it making a return in this game. As someone that loved the amount of tension and anxiety that Crimson Heads created in Resident Evil Remake, I'm beyond excited to see that mechanic return for Resident Evil Requiem. Number 4, Typewriters and Ink Ribbons. As a fan of classic survival horror games, especially the classic RE trilogy, I'm for one extremely excited to see the return of Ink Ribbons and Typewriters in Resident Evil Requiem. This is a survival horror mechanic that I've always loved about the original games because it creates another level of strategy, as you only have a limited amount of ink ribbons to save your game, which increases the survival aspect of survival horror Resident Evil. Typewriters and Ink Ribbons have been missing from the Resident Evil franchise for a really long time, excluding the remake of Resident Evil 2, of course. Ignoring that game, you really have to go all the way back to Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil Remake back in 2002 to find a game that featured typewriters and limited ink ribbons to save. Resident Evil 7's Madhouse mode sort of implemented something similar to this mechanic with tapes and a tape recorder, but outside of that, the strategy of choosing when and where to save your game was completely removed from all Resident Evil games going forward. Thankfully, Resident Evil Requiem looks to bring this iconic gameplay mechanic back, although it looks to be limited only to Grace's sections in the game. Still, if Grace's sections in the game are really about 50% of the game and 50% Leon's game, then I'm totally fine with this choice. Though, not gonna lie, I really wish Leon had limited saving too, as I miss the good old days of freaking out when I don't have enough ink ribbons to save my game right before a tough boss fight. Number 5, True Survival Horror returns. So while on the topic of Grace's sections in the game and the fact that her areas will be featuring an old school survival horror mechanic like saving with ink ribbons on a typewriter, I'm also extremely excited about the fact that Grace's sections will mostly revolve around the true survival horror experience. While Leon will have plenty of guns and bullets and, well, his kicking skills, Grace won't be able to rely on that as much as she'll have very limited resources at her disposal to eliminate enemies in the game. According to Nakanishi, it's highly encouraged that you don't attempt to take out every single enemy as Grace, as it's just not something that she's capable of doing. Sure, she can craft bullets, and those injector things I mentioned earlier can be used for stealth takedowns, but because of the limited amount of resources in her sections in the game, you'll find that stealth and running away are way more productive than combat. This, to me, feels like old school survival horror, and I totally love it. I've never been a big fan of the action horror focus that the series has recently relied on up until now, with Resident Evil 4 Remake and Resident Evil Village being the most recent examples of this. Not that these games are necessarily that bad, but they just don't feel like a survival horror game anymore, which is what the franchise was kind of built upon, and it's what made me fall in love with this franchise. With Grace's sections in the game, I feel like I'm going to be getting something similar to Resident Evil 7 with Ethan. I'll have to avoid combat as much as possible and use my wits rather than relying on my never-ending arsenal of bullets and healing items. Grace feels like she'll have very limited resources and will rely heavily on inventory management, hence why she has an inventory box and Leon doesn't. These traits make me feel like that with Grace, we'll be getting the true survival horror experience that made me fall in love with the franchise all of those years ago. Number 6, Stalker Enemies. Okay, so I know this next entry is hit or miss with a lot of the fans in the community due to Stalker enemy fatigue, but I'm someone that has always appreciated and even preferred Stalker enemies in my survival horror games. Something about having a terrifying Stalker enemy that you can't kill, only slow down when you're exploring different rooms and areas, truly adds a whole other level of fear and anxiety. It's a feeling that I don't think you get from most of the other enemies in the game, and it's something that I think most survival horror games should have nowadays, despite the negative feedback they get. Granted, I'm not looking for a stalker enemy that tracks you in every single area in the game from start to finish, but having a stalker enemy that creates a feeling of anxiety in a few small sections in the game, I think is something that would make perfect sense for a horror game. And thankfully, Resident Evil Requiem looks to at least be featuring one stalker enemy in the form of the Hag. This creature looks absolutely terrifying, and just from the demo gameplay footage that was revealed to us last year, she looks like she's going to contend with some of the greatest stalker enemies in Resident Evil's long list of stalkers. We really haven't seen any gameplay of Leon with this stalker enemy, so we're not very sure if Leon will have this stalker enemy in his gameplay sections yet, but at the very least, the horror focused sections of Grace appear to have this creature follow her in different areas of the game, at least 2 that we are aware of so far. The demo section and this quick shot of Grace shooting her with the Requiem at some point later in the game. Fingers crossed we get some truly intense and terrifying moments with this new stalker enemy, as I'm really hoping that she'll hit the same levels as RE2 Remake Mr. X and OG RE3 Nemesis. Number 7, enemies interacting with the environment. While we're still on the topic of monsters in Resident Evil Requiem, one last thing I want to address in this department is how these creatures appear to interact with the environment around them. Now, while this is not something that's completely new in a Resident Evil game, I will say we haven't seen anything at this level throughout the series up until this point. Looking at the regular zombies in the trailer so far, we can see them grabbing weapons from each other, picking up chainsaws that fell on the ground, and even getting their weapons stuck in walls or doorways as they are swinging it around. Then, looking at the mini boss fight with that fat zombie in the attic with Leon, we see how this creature moves and acts differently based on the environment around him. Because it's a small and secluded area, this monster gets stuck in doorways and has to reach his arms through them to grab Leon. Eventually, he'll need to break these doorways to get to Leon. Also, we see that when Leon climbs up on tall ledges, the monster attempts to climb up in a really cool and quite honestly hilarious animation. Everything I'm seeing with the way these creatures interact with the environment around them in this game is absolutely insane. Again, it's not something we haven't seen before, as RE4 Remake had situations similar to this, but the ones I'm seeing in these trailers so far feel more random and more unique, creating a really interesting experience with the zombies and enemies that both Leon and Grace will encounter. Number 8, exploring Raccoon City. Despite not a single trailer showcasing gameplay of Raccoon City yet, there's no denying the fact that the ruins of Raccoon City looks to be explorable to some extent. Again, we don't have much to go off except for Nakanishi's words and a few glimpses of scenes in Raccoon City, but based on what we're being told, we'll have the opportunity to move around the ruins of this iconic city in Resident Evil's history. As someone who claims Resident Evil 2 OG is my favorite RE game of all time, I'm so excited to revisit Raccoon City 28 years later. I'm hoping we get the chance to explore many of the iconic locations that we've been to in this series so far. I mean, we already know that we'll have the opportunity to visit the RPD station at one point, but it would be really cool if we get to visit locations like the Clock Tower, an area cut from the remake of Resident Evil 3, the orphanage, Kendo's gun shop, or even Raccoon City Hospital. Hell, if you really want to give me some fan service here, let us explore some areas from the Outbreak games like the zoo, Apple Inn, or the subways under Raccoon City. There's so much potential here with us returning to Raccoon City, and my hype level is through the roof with this feature in Requiem. I just hope that Capcom kind of knocks it out of the park and allows us to visit as many locations as possible while we're in Raccoon City, because quite honestly, this is the main event that they've been teasing so far, and I would be extremely sad and disappointed if it's not done right. However, I gotta say, I have faith in Nakanishi and Capcom, so here's to hoping for one of the best locations in the Resident Evil series. Number 9, zombies with personalities. How do you make zombies different and unique compared to the brainless, slow-moving creatures that we are used to within the series? By giving them interesting personality traits that also create some really unnerving situations. Resident Evil Requiem looks to once again go in a different direction with the zombies in this game, as this new virus has turned all of the victims inside of Rhodes Hill into zombies that still somewhat remembers their occupation before their death. By that, I mean you might come across a maid zombie who is obsessed with cleaning a mirror, or even a chef who's still carrying out his cooking duties in the kitchen despite being turned into a zombie. Add these traits and quirks to the already terrifying zombie design, complete with their rotting corpse, and you have some of the most unique and unsettling creatures you'll ever encounter in a horror game. I keep thinking back to the Shibito from the Siren games, and when comparing these zombies to those creatures, I'm definitely getting chills just thinking about the situations that these zombies with personalities we will come across. When talking to Nakanishi, he confirmed that the team developed over 100 unique personality quirks for the zombies in this game, and honestly, something about that has me really excited about avoiding and fighting these unique zombies, especially the chef and the singer zombies that we saw in the trailer. For some reason, those two really give me chills. Number 10, mini surprises in store for us. I don't know if I call this last thing a gameplay mechanic, but it is something that I really want to talk about in today's video. When it comes to Resident Evil Requiem's marketing, this game has arguably been the most secretive game developed by Capcom in a really long time. Think about it, the game wasn't announced until last June, and even then, Leon wasn't even revealed until last December, 3 months before the game releases. On top of that, Capcom has been very quiet about a majority of the game. Up until this point, we haven't seen a single boss fight except for a don't blink and you'll probably miss this scene of Grace shooting the hag, which might not even be a boss fight. This could be a stalker sequence that we saw. We also haven't seen anything of Raccoon City, which is being marketed as the main event in Resident Evil Requiem. Nakanishi has also teased that other monsters will be returning from previous games, but he hasn't gone into full detail about this at all, nor have we seen any footage of anything outside of the zombies, the chunks, and the hag. Oh, and the Blister Heads, I guess, I forgot about that. Finally, the entire plot of the game is very secretive. While there are some teases about what the game will be about, clearly Capcom appears to be teasing a bigger villain than Gideon with some of the footage that we've seen, and a bigger story that deeply connects to Leon and Grace in ways we don't even know yet. This game looks to have a lot of secrets and surprises in store for us, and I for one cannot wait to see what Capcom has planned for us. But that's it for this episode of Nerd Space Games. Hit up the comments and let me know what you think of today's video. Actually, let me take that back. I know I normally say that, but actually don't do that if you haven't seen any spoilers on Resident Evil Requiem yet. Reason being is because spoilers are kind of all over the place, including the comment sections of random Resident Evil videos, so I can't guarantee your safety in there, just saying. But if you want to risk going into the comments and try typing something, tell me which gameplay mechanic or feature are you most excited for with Resident Evil Requiem. Do you agree or disagree with any of my picks? Let me know your thoughts down below if you're brave enough. Anyway, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more survival horror content, especially if you're interested in the Resident Evil series. Also, leave a like on today's video if you enjoyed today's topic. Well, thanks for watching, and as always, I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Nerd Space Games. Take care.